Hello, this is Mr. Jared, and in this video tutorial we're going to be working in Adobe Illustrator to learn a little bit about the brushes. So I have a kind of a section up here for you that says the paintbrush tool, the blob brush tool, just to kind of learn with this a little bit. So far in class we've used the pen tool a lot. I have introduced the pencil tool well, which is kind of a little bit more informal, but a lot of you are familiar using the brush tool, maybe from your time or experience in Adobe Photoshop. So I'm going to show you how the brush works here in Illustrator, and we're only using a mouse. If we had kind of a tablet, a drawing, it would make this a lot more of a useful tool. But the paintbrush tool, you can see if you click and hold on it, there is a that says blob brush. So I'll show you the difference between the two. First, we're just going to work with the paintbrush. So right now I have a gradient on. This only actually with stroke, so I'll just switch that. I'm just going to change the color to something normal. Maybe like an orange so it matches the rest of this. And you can, up here at the top, you have your stroke. So that's your thickness of this. You have the file of it, if it's pointed or whatnot. And that really didn't change anything. And then you also have what type of brush it is, the brush definition. Okay, so you can see I loaded a few for you, and I'm going to talk to you about some of these other ones. So all of these brushes right now, or most of these brushes, as you can see that name, Touch, calligraphic brush, all of these that are the presets are calligraphic brushes. And I'm going to explain what a calligraphic brush here is in a second. But underneath this panel, or over here, you'll kind of find the little container with paintbrushes. That is that drops out. There is that little library book. So if we select that library, you can see there are tons of paintbrush already preloaded that we don't really realize that are there. So let's look through some of these and kind of see what they are. So here's like a decorative scatter brush, and you can kind of scatter all of these. So as you can see, here's some little, says dot rings. So if you kind of paint those in. Those change based on your stroke size, as you can see there. There's some other ones like some bubbles. And the bubbles change as well. It's on your stroke size. You can go through and you can see there's some banners, there's some bristle brushes, which we're not going to talk much about because we don't have a tablet. Some ones. And there's a whole bunch. And you can obviously download different brush packets. Here's a cool one that I think a lot of you might use. It's called the Water. So that is based on your stroke color. So this one will actually be an orange streak. If I change that to something different, like green, you can see. So the watercolors I've used a lot. I think they come out really cool. You can most certainly download more here. So the tool itself, even though you see a color, what it's actually creating is just a simple line. So if I select this and I change from that brush to maybe just basic, you can see it kind of changed right back. So it looks like it's a lot more than just a simple line, but that brush tool does. Now the blob brush is a little bit different. If I change to the blob brush here, this is a larger brush right now, and I didn't say talking about the paint brushes, but the bracket keys, so those are the two keys to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. If you hold those in, okay, either one of those, one will make them, the bracket on the left will make it smaller, or the bracket on the right will make it larger. That's your brush size. So that's a little bit different than changing your stroke. The blob brush itself, this actually acts like a paintbrush, right? So when you paint, it's not just creating a line. What it does when you let go is it makes a huge painted area. I'm like, okay, well, that's the same thing as the paintbrush, but it's different. Watch. Select this. It's actually an outline. So the paintbrush tool creates a symbol or a single. Okay, the blob brush actually outlines everything that you brushed or blobbed in. So this creates it. So just know what that is, because you might find a use for that, coloring in an area, and maybe you want to use the Pathfinder tool later on and unite two areas. It's a little bit easier for you. Okay, now let's learn about the different types of brushes there are. So first off, we're going to make our own calligraphic brush. So let's go up to either the brush drop down from here, or your brush panel over on the right. They're the same thing if you're in the Essentials Classic mode, which we are in. So up here, I'm going to hit the brush, and it brings up all these different options. So as of right now, Scatterbrush and Art Brush are able to be selected because we don't have something out here selected. So we can only make these three different types, the calligraphic, the bristle brush, and the pattern brush. And as you see here, we're only going to be going over 4 of them. We're not going to go over the bristle brush because I'm working with a mouse. And the bristle brush is based on how hard you actually press if you have a drawing tablet. So we're just going to do the caliper brush. Hit OK. And it brings up some options here. So these options, if you're kind of messing with these, you can see the angle, you can see the roundness of this, and you can see the size. And you can actually vary the size. This is kind of neat. I haven't found a real way to do this, but if you put this to like random, okay, it will actually change every time I go to draw. It will change anything from a 6 all the way up to a 15. So, for instance, if I hit OK, and I get my brush, first time I draw, it's that size. Next time, it's a little bit different, and a little bit different each and every time. Okay. Now, let's go back and kind of change that. So I'm just hitting undo. I'm going to go back up, and instead of making a new one, right here's that, just double click on it. Let's change some settings, and those settings I have written over here for you of what we're actually going to make. So you might want to zoom out when you do this. You can see I wrote angle at 15, and it's fixed. The roundness at fixed, and the size is just going to be 9 and fixed. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to be 45 fixed, 45, 20, and 9. And I'm going to set this to fixed. Now, why those numbers? Because I watched the tutorial online, and the video that I watched, it told me these numbers, and I liked how the brush looked. So that's why I took a screenshot of it. There's no set reason. So you can change these numbers if you like, but those I'm going to draw with here. So when I do that, and I get my paintbrush, this is actually like a calligraphy pen. So you can go ahead and with your mouse, try your best to actually draw maybe your name in cursive, if you know how to do that. This is kind of hard with a mouse, but you see it also smooths it out a little bit towards the end. So that is the calligraphic brush. It's basically a brush that you can change the pitch of it, the angle of it, the roundness of it, and there's probably a lot more you can do, but that's just your basic brush. Now, so I wrote the word feather here, and that is still a font. So I'm going to kind of change this, and we're going to create art brush. Now, this does not always have to be a word. It could be anything else, a shape, a color, something that you make. But I just going to make this out of a text just to do something a little bit unique. So with that selected, I'm going to hit Control Shift and O. Control Shift O. Go up to Type and Create Outlines. It's the same thing. Shift Control O. Okay, now that it thinks it's a shape, it no longer thinks it's a word, and it's selected, we're going to go up to our brush panel. We're going to hit New. And this time I'm going to select Art Brush. The settings are all over here on the right. So it says Scale Proportionately. I'm going to change it to Scale Proportionately. I'm not going to do anything with the width here. Leave that normal. I'm sure you can play with that. Watch some cool videos. I'm sure they'll show you some unique things. The direction's already set. The method of coloring, I have 2 tints. And what that means is you can change the color of your brush. If you just have it to black and you have none, it's always going to be black. I'm not going to flip or anything like that. We'll just hit OK. So now I'm going to click off of this because I don't want to select that thing anymore. Deselect that. I'm going to zoom in here, and I kind of just drew you what's almost like the quill, the middle part of a feather. I'll change the color. Get my paint. And now when I go to draw my paintbrush, you go to draw, it's going to be the word. Now that doesn't really look like feather. So what if we change its profile? So I have these change the profile. Okay, so that kind of looks like feather. So go ahead, kind of draw yourself a little feather. And the more you pull these, the longer they're going to be. And you have a lot more control here with a tablet, you know, or if you're zoomed out too far, you don't really have too much control. But you can also change the color of these. That's just kind of creating a little art brush. So an art brush itself allows you to draw something and follow that path. Again, you can always change these because the paintbrush tool is generating a line. And then you can always change these to different types of path follows. Now let's go to the scatter brush. So I created a dot here, just a whole bunch of random scribbly dots. I basically got the blob brush and I changed my size and I just clicked around like crazy. And then I grouped them all together. So I'm going to select this group, and you can see over, I have the settings as well for us, and I have it listed. This is for the scatter brush. So with this, I'm going to go up to the drop down, the brush drop down, hit new brush. I'm going to select scatter brush and hit OK. I'm going to change these settings to match that over there. So the size I'm going to set to random. Okay, so it kind of flips back and forth. And this is 120 to, I believe it's 120 over there as well. The spacing is fixed, and that's going to be 40. The scatter, we're just going to keep it at 0%. And the rotation is going to be random, and that's going to be negative 180 to 180. So that is so that it rotates back and forth. And we're going to change this, the rotation, to the path. Method, again, is going to be tints. And if you're wondering how I got all of these numbers, I, again, watched a different tutorial online. That's where I learned a lot of stuff. It's just straight from YouTube. I found a mixture of different scatter brushes of how somebody made them and some settings that they were using based on the actual scatter pattern that I have. So these numbers are not like set in stone. It's not like what you always have. This is just something that I have found works for this in particular pattern. So we're going to hit the OK button. And now we have a scatter brush, which is right up here. And you can see because I used those and those dot rings earlier, they kept up here. Same thing with the watercolor. Okay, click off. And now this is really cool. I just learned this the other day as well. If I would have known this back, this would have probably saved me a lot of time. And this is something very, very simple. So I've showed you how to make a clip already in class. We're going to use the paintbrush and a clipping mask at the same time. It's going to be a lot easier than what I've showed you before. So I'm going to select this piece. And if you're wondering why I select things like the teeth or these little highlights and move them, it's because in our layers panel, I did lock these. I have some group down here and I locked them. Okay, so I kind of already set this thing up for success in our demo. So I'm just going to the body of the little alien or animal or whatever this thing is that I drew. And we're going to take our mouse over to this small, tiny symbols over here. I wish Adobe would make their symbols a little bit bigger. But you see this says Draw Normal. Well, that's the mode that we've always been in. There's two other little drawing modes here that I didn't know much about until I kind of just saw those the other day. And I was like, what are these? And I looked up a video about them. So this is drawing behind. That's not good right now. That would mean like if you want to draw a background and you don't want to have to go through and lock different layers. We want to draw inside. Here's the cool thing. With that body selected, when I click on this, it's now creating its own little clipping mask. So my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to click in here. And you might think, well, it's going to change the body of the little alien. It's not, because the is selected. Okay, we are drawing inside this shape. So it's creating its own clipping mask as we speak. And you can kind of see that. It's going to appear. So with that darker color selected, I'll go and I'm going to change the opacity, maybe something down to like 20%, okay, or maybe even lower than that. Let's go to like 15%. I'm going to get my paint, and maybe I'll set the stroke to like a half, so it's something smaller. You can see I automatically set the color because I had this on fill on accident. So I'm going to hit swap here if that happened to you, and with the fill in the front, I'm going to hit, so I'm only drawing with that color that I wanted. Now, I'm going to go off of the little alien's body, kind of color down, and then maybe around. If you want to come up this other side, you can. But this almost adds like a texture to them because it's a little scatter brush. So I'm sure you can probably find for a brush like this. There are tons and tons and tons of different cool tutorials or brushes that you can download online. The reason why I thought this was, it just took him from being a flat character to having a little bit more depth to him. Now, if I added a drop shadow or I added some more highlights on the out, that might do it. But we can also do this to his eye as well. So let's select the eye now. I might have to get out of this individual mode. But let's select that eye. I'll hit that drawing inside mode once again. So I'm only drawing inside the eye. Let's eyedrop the eye so we know that we're working with that color. Actually, this darker, we do this darker gray color. I want to make it even darker. So let's double click on that. Let's change it here. set this up to maybe like 15%, like we get our paintbrush. And I want to switch over to a stroke so I don't have to go through that same mistake that I did before. And let's just draw a little bit of a curve on here. Okay. Now I notice I didn't change my stroke size, so that's kind of large. If you want to change that, you can just kind of move your mouse back over it. You'll see there's that line that I drew. You have to move your mouse around to find that line. Might have to get my white arrow to do that. And direct select. There we go. Okay, and then you can change your stroke weight if it's not showing up. You can change your stroke weight down if you want to mess with that a little bit more. So I just moved it down like a ½ inch. Didn't change too much, but it made the dots the same size dots. Okay, so that is working with the scatter brush, kind of making a cool little dot pattern here, and also using a clipping mask to draw inside. If you want to look over at your layers panel, you'll see what that actually did, if you can find that. Yeah, so it's right there. It's a clipping mask now. And as you can see, it clipped it inside that shape because it didn't delete the background color. Now there's also some pattern brushes. And the pattern brushes are something that I have extremely useful because a lot of the pattern brushes that I've wanted to use over the times, I found online that somebody already made them for me. And I love them in here that I've used multiple times over in different designs that I've done. So the first one, if you select this word that says rope, I just made this and I preloaded a rope brush that I downloaded. So this is a pattern brush. So I'll select that pattern. And as you can see, it kind of follows. Now it does get a little bit glitchy here or there, you know, it kind of warps it. And it kind of overlaps it in certain spots. It doesn't know what to do. But I have found this brush pretty cool. Same thing here with being a teacher. I have designed a lot of things with baseballs or softballs on them that have the stitching. I'm going to select that path, and I already grouped this and drew it in a way that it's going to clip it off. Plus, it also has these two paths selecting time. I'm going to go up here and select this little stitching pattern that I made. And that's a little too large, as you can see. So we're going to change that down to 0.5. That is pretty realistic. It looks really cool. And that is a pattern brush. So brushes are, if you know how to use them, and a lot of what I have learned is all online. So do not be afraid to Google search something, go on even search for something. There's a whole world of information out there, especially with brushes, and a lot of stuff that you can download for free and use.